Hello, my name is Ahlmeirah, Ariel Hallaire. I run the Center of Love and Enlightenment, and I'm a medical doctor, and I've also been a healer for over 20 years. And I'd like to talk a little bit about shock and trauma in this little video. I have, as a healer and as a doctor, it's probably the most common thing that I encounter in my work and in my sessions. And from my perspective, I believe and feel that shock and trauma is endemic in our society today. So I'd like to start off by just detailing how I understand trauma. Basically, trauma is some kind of deeply distressing experience. And it can be a physical experience, such as a car accident or an operation or an illness. It can be an emotional experience. So, for example, if you have a divorce or somebody dies, it can be also a spiritual experience. And basically, what defines trauma is that the experience feels too much, and the intensity of the emotion and the experience is too much for our system to handle all in one go. And often what happens when we have trauma is that we have associated feelings of helplessness, disempowerment. We feel helpless, we don't know what to do, it's too much for us. There's often a lot of fear or even terror, and so much so that we can become frozen. In fact, one of the problems with trauma is that part of our energy gets frozen as a result of the trauma, and this can lead to severe lack of energy and stuckness later on in our life. And basically what happens is that the traumatic event, is so overwhelming and is so much for us to process that we can't handle all of it in one go. So we have a tendency to dissociate. And what this means is that there's a part of us that cuts off, that numbs out. And shamans even talk about this. They call it soul loss. So from a shamanic perspective, it's like a piece of us actually leaves because the trauma is just too much. And the amount of emotions linked with the trauma can be enormous, and there can also be a lot of rage. There can also be some shame, some guilt, a huge amount of possible emotions. The reason why we dissociate and the reason why we feel overwhelmed is because there's just too much happening, too many emotions and too many sensations happening all in one go. And if we have successive traumas that don't get healed, that don't get released, basically it gets stored in the body. And long term, trauma can cause all sorts of problems like neurosis, low energy, poor sleep, stuckness. It can also cause physical pain, all different types of physical pain. And all sorts of illnesses are associated with some kind of major trauma. In fact, quite a few studies have been done around cancer, which have shown that in the 2 years preceding the diagnosis of the cancer, there's usually some major trauma that wasn't processed fully, and that got stuck in the body. So trauma causes illness. We also have trauma coming to us from past lives, and that can be very difficult to access. So, for example, if you had a traumatic death in a previous life where you drowned, this might show itself in a kind of fear of water or fear of boats or fear of swimming. And we also have something called epigenetic trauma, which basically means that you're carrying trauma from your ancestors. And this can also be a major contributory factor in your life. And it's actually been proven recently from mice studies. Basically what they did is they had two populations of mice, and they traumatized one generation and they didn't traumatize the other ones. And then the offspring of the traumatized mice showed very high level of anxiety and neurosis and strange behavior. So that was just a very short experiment, whereas the other mice were perfectly normal. So if you're carrying some kind of neurosis or subconscious anxiety, it could actually be coming from your genetics. So I hope this has been an interesting little informational video for you. And I'm going to be creating another one, which is about how to heal trauma, and actually there's going to be a healing transmission on that video. So hopefully you can have access to that as well. Thank you for hearing me. Bye-bye.